which is why we do what we do, right?
That's so important.
And kind of going, on, the tangent of the roadblocks and the things that we face as women of color in our space, but mainly for venture capitalist perspective, and I'll direct this with Nikki. What are some specific biases that the two of you have faced with specifically the Missing Piece app and with Hope Tears?
Oh man, so let me go down the list. But I just feel like there's been a barrier to entry in general, to be honest. I feel like we've been more scrutinized for all of our qualifications, and just having to learn along the way on our own. Not really having the mentorship and initially to kind of help guide us to like the ins and outs of what is required of us, and just trying to shoot our shot and knowing that we need it, but not necessarily knowing the steps to put in place ahead of the step, if that makes sense, because there's like steps before the step.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know, you just try, and then next thing you know, they're like, you got to do a personal guarantor, and then, hey, I might have made some mistakes, when I was 18, 19, 20, and they're still on my report, didn't even know. How do I get those off so I can have an actual fair chance? I'm actually making good money now. You guys still think I'm a Lyft driver at Chase Bank. Those type of things, so I feel like we're more scrutinized. I feel like they don't give us a chance. I know that just looking up some stats, in preparation for this, I feel like other counterparts, can go in there and, they're just given a chance on the maybe or the potential of it being successful. But what for us is like, what have you done? Let's see your long laundry list of successes first. Just not given that chance to fail first and then fail again and then make it, because that's what entrepreneurship is.
I can't attest to that enough, especially with the imposter syndrome, where I think that we're taught, imposter syndrome is, and I think it's 100% real. But when you get a little deeper than that, it's because, to Nikki's point, it's because we don't know what to do. It's not that we can't, because imposter syndrome is the feeling of we can't do something. But in reality, we all know that we can do something, we're empowered to do it, but the question is, well, what's next, right? Because there's things that we have to follow in a roadmap that nobody taught any of us, right? But that our counterparts just grew up in those worlds. So with that tangent in terms of imposter syndrome and building communities of women and empowering them to continue to, build their businesses, can you share a success story, Dr. Karine?
Oh man, success stories, multiple.
Yes.
But what I was thinking as you ladies were talking is that how much tech really plays a huge role in business, right? And so for the women that mentoring and working with, implementing tech or teaching them how to implement tech in their business has been the success within itself. Nowadays, you cannot have a business if you do not have a digital presence, if you do not know how to use technology, right? And so it's been great to see how business owners, entrepreneurs can use Instagram to scale, or Facebook, or whatever it is, right? They can use courses that they've created online to scale, So I think just the success of integrating tech in business or entrepreneurship has been a success within itself.
I love that. Can I speak to that
Absolutely,
as well?
of course.
Because that made something come to my mind. We recently went to Arlen Hamilton's conference in LA, and she was talking about all of the barriers to entry, and she's a success story in herself. Like, she was homeless, living like at the airport, and had all she had was her laptop. She was using that free Wi-Fi, and she's like, I told myself, bet on yourself and believe in having that vision for the future where you can do it. She was like, in a couple of years, I will be able to have the VC as my own. After taking her ideas to people and them like shooting her down, you can never do it. But one thing she said, and it's stuck, I'm like making it a life mantra. But after having all of what I shared earlier, like being turned down for a lot of funds that we needed to get to further our business, she said that we have to be our own money. And I'm like, ooh. And then the people she had on like broke that down, like what does that mean? And it's what you're talking about. like closing up that digital divide, helping people to understand. That's like a lot of what we do for our students. Like we're like, you don't have to rack your brain. There is an app for that. There is a technology for that. So where those gaps exist that we can't get it, we have to create it for ourselves and help others to learn more about those things so that they can build and they can grow and get the funding when they don't have it.
Yeah, and I think, we found out actually specifically that we receive 7% of venture funding. And that's a total of $7 billion, which sounds like a lot until you realize that the projected VC funds for 2024 is actually $100 billion. And
So-
we also contribute 20% to the US GDP, and that we generate $1.8 trillion annually. So think about what impact that actually has and how little and the funding that we're really getting. If we owned our own, if women-owned businesses received funding that was on par with their male counterparts, we would add an estimated $7.9 trillion to the U.S. economy.
And Lord knows we need it. With the housing crisis.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
I think our demographics are the ones that are propelling the GDP, which is the craziest part. I think that we're now seeing the change in history for the very first time.
Yes.
That our numbers are the ones that are rapidly growing in the housing market, in the tech space.
I was gonna say in every industry.
Space,
In every
Every industry. I'm heavily involved in the fashion industry through Loud Week. And just fashion, technology and fashion alone has changed the game. So
You get
yes.
access to the same people that you didn't even know about. There's this kid that I follow on TikTok, and he started making videos and showing like his fashion, and they would give him like prompts for themes and stuff, and he was so creative and so incredible. Now he's like walking in Fashion Week and doing all this stuff. He would have never had those opportunities as a black boy from the hood, but he had the fashion sense. He knew all of the designers. Like, it's incredible what opportunities can come from just having, that presence and having the ability to write in the phone.
The access.
The access. That's the word that pops in my mind.
That, I agree. I think a lot of us run platforms on just the access alone.
Yeah.
The accessibility of who knows about technology, what can I implement in my business. You don't have to become an expert at this. There's an app for that and things of that nature. And it really boils down to a culture shift, right? And not in the way that we think it is, but it's really like that generational knowledge sharing of maybe we don't have to do it. Like the proverbial, well, we've always done it that way. Well, maybe we don't have to do it that way.
It's turning on its head.
Right? Like maybe there are better ways. So in terms of kind of accountability and, shifting the culture in our technology spaces, what are some of, and I'm going to ask this for the three of you because the three of you have such different perspectives, or what's some effective strategies companies can implement to foster a more inclusive and supportive culture for women of color in technology?
No, you
Who wants to take it? I'll take it. I mean, of course, there's like all of the stereotypical things that you may or may not hear in business, right? Like do the ERGs and do the training and have the DEI stats and all that. I personally feel like put some women of color in leadership roles, right? Not just like, some of the things I had looked up about this too was like, it said, get them trained and prepared. And it's like, I don't just want to be trained and prepared, but how does that look through the entire org, right? If only there's one black woman or Latina woman at the top, it's like, that's not something that we should be proud of. You're telling me in a 10,000 person company, there was 2 qualified women to run it? That just, do that. I think that's a huge thing for me is like, I think as culture has changed and as we're more educated, we know that we can look at an org chart, we can see, is this company actually believe in what they're saying, or is it just bullshit?
Yeah.
Pretty words on paper.
That's it right there for me. The leadership. That's what it is. Like, don't tell me that you believe in women, right? Having equal or access to the same things when you don't put us in leadership. It's super important to see. Look at that org chart.
I think it's also looking at the org chart and also really like holding them accountable. Like what are So
Call them
once you
out.
are in that position of leadership, right? Some of us have been in positions of leadership. After you get that position, I feel like as women of color, we continue to have a responsibility to continue to uplift people around us.
Yes.
Reach back and pull them up.
Yes.
That's like what I'm always saying. And I also think to that point, also like highlighting the companies in tech that are leading the way in that too. I like to say that about my company, for example, that I work for, Cisco. They're doing all the right things in the sense of having those programs. I'm a leader in Cisco Black Professionals that care about mental health. Like specifically, my pillar is about the mental health of the people of color in the company. We have a very strong presence. We do our own conferences. They have lots of leadership programs set into place. They also have compliance things for biases and things of that nature, kind of like what she was saying. But the good thing is you actually see higher up the leadership of people of color, you know what I'm saying? And also allies too. And I feel like where we call out the companies that are not doing it, we also need to highlight the ones that are so that people can see the way, you know? Because I know for me, coming into that huge company with 50,000 people, definitely had imposter syndrome coming in. I didn't feel like I belonged initially. And so being able to have Miss Karen, who reached out to me immediately and was like, look, come join the Cisco Black Professionals. She wrote me on on LinkedIn, welcomed me on, and then not only welcomed me on, but got me into programs right away. She was like, what's your background? What are you good at? What are you interested in? Oh, mental health, you have a background in that? Great, we're making a pillar. And I want you to be on the committee, and now, 2 years later, I'm head of the committee. So that growth can come from just having those opportunities, having that visibility, and being a part of a place. That's why with Hope Dealers, we always tell people to consider those things before you get into a job, because sometimes it's more than just making the money. You could be totally unhappy there if they don't have anything cultural reference at your job, you know?
And just to add to that was, I think it's less about race and more about cultural competence,
That part.
right? It's not so
There it
much
is.
that, oh, they're black or white or anything, but what are some of those nuanced things? Like you were talking about smelling, right? Certain things from being in Costa Rica, right? We were talking about that. That should be allowed to be spoken about comfortably in a work or a corporate environment, any environment. It doesn't just have to be corporate, right?
Second guessing.
And if not, right, you may have to think twice before you say that if you're in a certain meeting or in a certain place. That shouldn't be the case. We need to teach about that part of things, right? I can't be like, girl, this hairpiece is itchy. Like in a white male environment, they're gonna look at me as less, or right, tattoos, if you have tattoos, like it's cultural competence, not so much race. It's not about race.
I love that you brought that up in terms of culture and companies, and how are some ways that organizations and people that are working in those organizations can kind of adopt more inclusive ways of thinking to start thinking about things like that?
Man, that's a hard question, because for me, I think it has a lot to do with your personal community, right? Who you surround yourself with, yeah. Because I can teach you it all day, right? But it has to be a part of who you are, your character, you know? So it's just, I think that's why the community plays such a huge role in who our leadership is, you know? And yeah, I don't think it's something that's always just taught. I think it's something that you gotta live out as a person so that it is portrayed and filtered out in your work, you know?
Yeah.
Well, sit down with somebody
And
else.
exposure too.
Yeah.
Sit with somebody else at lunch.
Sit
You know,
with
don't
somebody else,
always
yeah.
congregate with the same people. Like, make yourself uncomfortable on purpose.
Be willing to learn.
And just sit and listen. That's it. Like, ask people intentional questions about their culture, how they grew up, and be willing to learn and being open to learn. And I think that's where you start. It literally starts from like just those simple things, and then you build friendships, and then you build understanding and caring and compassion for people, not sorry for people.
Right.
No, yeah,
Just-
two totally different lines of thinking, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, then you have that's true allyship. You know what I'm saying? That's true advocacy. Would you stand up for me in a situation where we're in a corporate environment and someone says something that you know is icky? You know, and sniding under the table a little bit. I need a friend that would be like, hold up. wait a minute, that's not okay.
But
Call
I
out
think-
your own people.
I think that definitely starts from the top down. Like everybody wants to say like the bottom up. It's the top
Yeah.
down,
That's
right?
the culture, the workplace culture.
Yeah, it's the top
Yeah, it
down.
starts from the top.
And I think like this seems so obvious as somebody who's mixed. I'm black and white, and so I already feel like my whole existence was nuanced, like always.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be that difficult to look at a company and say, is it diverse? It's not. It's very simple. If you
It's very
actually start
easy.
looking it up, looking in from any type of company, right? If you look at schools, if you look at corporate companies, if you look at small companies, places you're trying to work with. I mean, even taking it, all of us here are entrepreneurs. How do we live that out, right? How do we also make sure that we're bringing people? And I tell everybody, it doesn't matter if they're in tech, out of tech. I'm like, hey, you want to do this? You want to do that? Like, here's an opportunity, because how else are we going to actually go anywhere, right? If we're not doing that. And so I just don't think it's that hard to guess. If we just simply look at the companies, we can tell who's actually truly diverse and believes in it.
I
Walk
can't
and
agree
walk.
more. Yeah.
Walk it like you're talking.
It's really not that hard when you ask, when you take the time to look and really ask the right questions,
Yeah.
right? And in terms of asking the right questions, for the digital divide, right, and finding gaps in the technology landscapes that we play a part in. We all come from totally different industries, right? So in terms of the digital divides that you guys have experienced, how does it really disproportionately affect us women of color, especially in terms of having specific tech opportunities in our spaces or in entrepreneurial spaces too? Either
Both.
one, it could be career driven or in entrepreneurial spaces.
I think living in a place like New Orleans, it really like makes me emotional because I think they're like third from the bottom in education and exposure. That's why they have a lot of initiatives to bring programs in now, but it's 2024. You know what I'm saying? There's already a legacy of people like I went to school there, my second degree. I went to school there, and there were people in my classes that were like struggling with reading things. You know, so let alone technology and thinking. It's like the mindset first and foremost. The mindset to even think that you can do this, that you have a place. Because technology has the tech industry has this enamored thing, like you have to be an engineer, you gotta know the ones and the zeros. You have had to go to these colleges and Yale and MIT.
For Central.
Yeah, so just first of all, getting to that granular level of getting to that mindset where you can 100% do that. I start with the basics. I'm like, it takes a lot of different portions to create a tech company. It's not just engineers. Let's start there. You don't have to just be an engineer to be in tech.
Yeah.
I am in sales. I sell the technology. And oftentimes, we get paid more than the engineers. Like real talk. You know what I'm saying? So that just really having somebody to speak to them and say, I'm here, I'm reaching back to you to give you the visibility and to encourage you to just try. So I think that's something I'm very, very passionate about. That's where Hope Dealers came from in the first place. It started with me getting my little foot in the door and saying, hey Justin, hey, I know you can do this. You selling cars? I know you can do this. And now he's an AE and went to 2 companies and is doing great. It starts with that, just giving people an opportunity. So there's lots of barriers.
I have one last question, and I'm going to throw this left to Karine. And what are some successful initiatives or programs that have helped bridge the digital divide for our marginalized communities? I know you're talking about program initiative now.
Drop it.
Well, honestly, the first thing that pops in my mind is with the chamber, we have this thing called Lunch and Level Up, right? And every month we do lunches where women either lunch from work, they come over, or throughout the day they just come, and it's a workshop with learning about things in tech, learning what's affecting our corporate offices or our entrepreneurial world. And I think education
That
it's education, you know, and I'm not talking about going to a college or going to, I'm not talking about that. You can go to YouTube University, you can do whatever you need to do, but I think if you learn whatever it is you need to learn, you will succeed. You will bridge any gap and divide.
I love that.
It's like the Read Rainbow.
There
It's in
are-
a book, but it's actually online.
There are
It's
some really
literally
great
amazing.
programs too, like Techstars has a foundation, apparently, I didn't know this actually. Black Girls Code and Google's Growth
Yes.
Google Initiative is also some things that really will help to do that. But there's also, so, I mean, just to touch on like more of the consumer side, apparently there's a lot of people still who do not have access to even the internet, which I did not realize was
Or having to have access to smartphones.
Such a
or
thing.
computers. Yep. There's
No,
lots
that's
of
a thing.
initiatives just to
Yeah.
bring digital, not digital,
yeah.
but actual infrastructure
Yeah.
to marginalize.
And there's a
Stop them to
program.
just do homework.
We do a lot
Yeah.
of that. My company, we have a whole team that does
Oh,
that.
that's awesome.
That's all they do. They go to like different countries, but also rural area. They have a map that one of the ladies came and represented to us. She was like, here's a map of the United States where people don't even have internet, y'all. So they go there and build the infrastructure.
Oh, just programs like Everyone On and Connect Home USA, I guess, focus on providing low-income families, many of whom are from minority backgrounds with affordable internet
There we
and
go.
digital training, so.
It just inequity. They don't have the money,
Yeah.
you know, so.
I think our major takeaways is access, no gatekeeping, making sure we pick our fellow sister and brother's hand and move them along forward, and education. The more we know is the more we grow. Cheesy, but it's the truth.
Oh,
Awesome.
yeah.
True.
And thank you ladies so much.
Thank you